Welcome to the Methodology Institute's SPSS video tutorial series, sponsored by the LSE Annual Fund. In this tutorial, we'll be working with the crosstabs function in SPSS to examine the relationship between two categorical variables, for which we will firstly be looking at a crosstab or contingency table of the two variables, and secondly at a statistical test for independence between these variables, which is known as chi-squared. And so for this example, we'll be using the crosstab and chi-square test to examine whether a lesser or greater degree of interest in politics might help explain people's willingness to take part in a peaceful demonstration or protest. So I've highlighted the first variable we'll be using in the variable view window, and we can see how this measure has been coded if we click on the right-hand side of the values column. And from this we can see that when asked how interested they were in politics, respondents who answered that they were not very or not at all interested have been coded with the value 0, whereas respondents who answered that they were very or quite interested in politics have been coded here with the value 1. So now that we're familiar with the coding for our first variable, we can just click cancel to come out of the value labels. And as you can see, I've now highlighted our second variable, and this has three categories which record respondents' answers to the question, would you attend a peaceful protest or demonstration? And once again, if we select the right-hand side of the values box for this variable, we can see how these response categories have been coded. And so those respondents who answered no, they would never attend a peaceful protest or demonstration, have been coded with the value 0. Those respondents that answered that they might attend such a protest have been coded with the value 1. And those respondents that answered that yes, they have actually attended such a protest in the past have been coded with the value 2. Those respondents who refused to answer have been coded with the value 98, and those who answered don't know have been coded with the value -9. And so, having familiarized ourselves with the coding for our second variable, we can click cancel and come out of the value labels box. Okay, so we're now ready to run the analysis, and for this we need to select the Analyze drop-down menu. Then under Descriptive Statistics, we select Crosstabs. Now simply for the sake of consistency, I tend to follow the rule when using the Crosstabs function in SPSS that I'll select my explanatory variable for the rows and my response variable for the columns. And so firstly we need to select our explanatory variable from the list on the left-hand side, and that was the two category variable which recorded whether or not people were interested in politics. So we select that with the left mouse button, and then use the arrow here to move it across into the rows box. And then secondly, we need to select our response variable, and that was this one here. Would you attend a peaceful demonstration or protest? And again, we use the arrow here to move it across into the columns box. And there are two more options we need to select before we can run the analysis. The first of which is to ask SPSS to include the chi-squared statistic in the output. And to do that, we select the Statistics option here on the right-hand side, tick the chi-squared box here, and just click Continue. And secondly, we want SPSS to provide us with the percentages that will help us to interpret the crosstab or contingency table. And we can select this option by clicking on the Cells box on the right-hand side, and then under Percentages, in this case, we want the row percentages, so I tick that option and then click Continue. And one of the reasons why I find it helpful to follow the rule whereby I select the explanatory variable as the rows in the crosstab is that I then know to select the row percentages. Okay, so we've now selected all the options that we need at this stage, so we can click OK to generate the output. Okay, so I've now switched across to the output viewer in SPSS so that we can have a look at the results of our analysis. And the first table in the output simply provides us with a breakdown for our sample between valid responses and missing values. But what we're really interested in is the second table in our output. And this table provides us with a breakdown for our three category response variable, which recorded whether or not people were willing to attend a peaceful demonstration or protest, between the two categories in our explanatory variable, whether people were not very or not at all interested in politics, or whether people were very or quite interested in politics. And so to give you an illustration of the results that are shown in our crosstab, we can see, for instance, that amongst those who are not very or not at all interested in politics, 57.6% stated that they would never attend a peaceful demonstration or protest. In contrast, only 35.2% of those who were very or quite interested in politics stated that they would never attend a peaceful protest or demonstration. And so secondly, we can see that the percentage of respondents who stated that they might attend a peaceful demonstration or protest is broadly similar between the two groups. And lastly, we can see that amongst those respondents who were not very or not at all interested in politics, only 8.1% answered that yes, they had attended a peaceful demonstration or protest in the past, whereas amongst those who were very or quite interested in politics, the proportion who had attended a demonstration in the past was 27.5%. And so just from our crosstab, it does appear to be that there is a difference in respondents' willingness to attend a peaceful demonstration or protest according to whether or not they're interested in politics. And so the last table in our output provides us with the results of the Pearson's chi-square test, which are shown in the first row, in which we are given a value for our chi-square test statistic, which is shown as 15.471, the degrees of freedom, which is shown as 2, and the p-value, which SPSS shows here in the last column as 0.000, but which in fact equates to and must be stated as a p-value of less than 0.001. And so our test statistic of 15.471, with its corresponding p-value of less than 0.001, provides us with very strong evidence against the null hypothesis that our two variables, interest in politics and willingness to protest, are independent or not associated in the population from which our sample data was drawn. Or in other words, based on the results of our chi-square test, there is a statistically significant relationship between interest in politics and willingness to protest, at least at the 5% significance level. Okay, so that concludes this tutorial, which has shown how to use SPSS to examine a relationship between two categorical variables based on a crosstab and the interpretation of the chi-squared test.